Secrets, betrayal, and a leak that shook the streets. Camron has just dropped an explosive revelation that left Chrissy Lampkin exposed and Jim Jones completely stunned. What was supposed to stay buried deep in the shadows has now been dragged into the spotlight. And the fallout is uglier than anyone could have imagined. For years, fans knew there was tension between Camron and Jim, old wounds that never fully healed. But nobody expected Cam to come with this. His leak didn't just hit Jim where it hurts, it hit Chrissy too, pulling her right into the middle of a storm she never asked for. Suddenly, whispers turned into full-blown accusations. Private matters became public drama. Then the bond Jim and Chrissy had been fighting to protect was left dangling by a thread. What exactly did Camron reveal? Why did he choose now to drop this bombshell? And most importantly, can Jim Jones and Chrissy survive a scandal this explosive? Or is this the final crack that tears them apart forever? It started like a whisper in the wind, the kind of rumor that fans usually brush off as gossip, until Camron made sure no one could ignore it. The history between Cam and Jim runs deep, built on brotherhood, music, and hustling side by side through Harlem's grind. Together, they once ruled the game as part of the Diplomats' Dipset. It's one of the most legendary rap crews to come out of New York. But with great loyalty came even greater betrayal. And over the years, cracks began to form in their brotherhood. To understand why this leak hit so hard, you have to rewind. Camron and Jim Jones weren't just collaborators. They were family in every sense of the word. They built an empire together, creating an image of Harlem unity that had the streets buzzing. But somewhere between the fame, the money, and the egos, things went sideways. Cam stepped back from the group. Jim felt abandoned, and the two began exchanging subliminal shots. What was once love became a cold rivalry. Fast forward to today, and their relationship is fragile at best. Fans always knew they weren't as tight as they used to be, but nobody thought Cam would dig this deep, going after something as personal as Jim's love life. Yet that's exactly what he did. With one leak, Cam turned years of whispers into hard, undeniable reality, and Chrissy Lampkin, Jim's longtime partner, was suddenly in the spotlight for all the wrong reasons. So what was leaked? That's the million-dollar question. According to insiders, Cam dropped never-before-seen footage, private conversations, and even hints of messages that exposed details Chrissy would have preferred stayed locked away forever. Whether it was about past flings, hidden arguments, or a moment she thought would never leave the privacy of her home. The leak was messy, and it had Jim blindsided. Imagine this: Jim Jones scrolling through his phone, seeing the world explode with a story about the woman he's loved for years. The woman who has stood beside him through reality TV, business struggles, and endless drama. Suddenly, her name was trending, her face plastered across blogs. And all of it tied back to his former brother-in-arms, Camron. The streets immediately lit up. Fans couldn't believe Cam had taken it there. Some defended him, saying it was just another chess move in the long-standing war of egos between him and Jim. Others were disgusted, calling it a low blow to drag Chrissy into their feud. Why involve her? She didn't sign up for this, one fan tweeted. Another countered, "This is what happens when beef gets too personal. Nobody's safe." But what's worse than the leak itself was the timing. Chrissy and Jim had only just been repairing their image after years of on and off struggles in the public eye. From the infamous "will they ever get married?" storyline to their appearances on Love and Hip Hop, they had become a symbol of complicated love, messy but enduring. The leak shattered that fragile narrative, reopening wounds they'd been trying to heal behind the scenes. Sources say Chrissy was devastated. The idea that private parts of her life were now weaponized in a feud she had no part in left her humiliated. She reportedly broke down, questioning how much more she could take. Jim, on the other hand, was torn between rage and disbelief. How could someone who once called him brother betray him like this? Insiders close to Cam paint a different picture. They claim this wasn't random. Cam had been holding onto this card for years, waiting for the right moment to play it. And when the opportunity came, he pulled the trigger without hesitation. Why, some say it was revenge. Others believe it was about power, a way to prove that no matter how much time had passed, he still held leverage over Jim Dodd. The leak sent shockwaves through Harlem, through the industry, and through fans who had followed the Dipset legacy for decades. Old heads shook their heads in disappointment, remembering the unity that once defined the crew. Younger fans, however, ate it up, flooding social media with memes, reactions. An endless speculation. Blogs ran wild with headlines. Camron exposes Chrissy. Jim Jones humiliated. Dipset war turns personal. Did Cam go too far this time? Even celebrities began chiming in, some calling it petty. Others warning that this kind of personal warfare could end badly. One rapper tweeted, "Y'all playing too close to home with this one? Family ain't for the internet." But in the middle of the noise, one image stood out. Jim Jones, silent, his face unreadable. He didn't clap back immediately. He didn't rush to defend Chrissy on social media. And that silence spoke volumes. Was he stunned because the leak was true? Or was he simply trying to gather himself before responding? Chrissy's name trended for hours, and with every retweet, every share, the humiliation grew. The couple had always been transparent with their ups and downs on television, but this was different. This wasn't scripted drama. This wasn't for ratings. This was real life, ripped wide open for the world to consume. And Cam, he didn't seem fazed at all. In fact, he leaned into the chaos, posting cryptic captions, dropping subtle jabs, and making it clear that he wasn't backing down. Camron made one thing certain. This wasn't an accident. It was calculated. A deliberate move to shake Jim Jones at his core. For fans, the question wasn't just why Cam leaked the information, but how far he was willing to go. If he was willing to drag Chrissy into it, what else did he have in the vault? What other secrets had he been holding, waiting for the perfect time to release? One thing was clear. This wasn't just beef anymore. This was war. And Jim Jones, blindsided and betrayed, was left with an impossible choice: defend Chrissy and risk giving more energy to the scandal, or stay silent and let the world think the worst. The moment Camron's leak hit the internet, the world watched to see how Chrissy Lampkin would react. For years, she had been the strong one, holding her ground on Love and Hip Hop, demanding respect from Jim Jones and refusing to let outsiders tear down her relationship. But this was different. This wasn't a typical reality TV fight. This wasn't staged for cameras. This was personal, raw, and humiliating. Sources close to Chrissy said she broke down the moment the leak went viral. She didn't want to believe it. She didn't want to face the reality that her private life was now the center of a public storm. All because of a decades-old beef between Jim and Cam. She felt violated, one insider shared. It wasn't just about the content of the leak, it was about the principle. Her life, her love, her name. They were being used as weapons in a war she never signed up for. But while Chrissy cried, Jim Jones stayed eerily silent. His fans waited for a fiery clapback. They expected him to jump on Instagram Live, rant into the camera, and defend his woman like he had done in the past. But instead, Jim vanished. He didn't post. He didn't speak. He didn't even drop a subliminal. And that silence was louder than any words he could have said. The blogs immediately picked up on it. Why isn't Jim defending Chrissy? Became the top question. Some speculated he was ashamed because there was truth in Cam's leak. Others suggested he was simply stunned, frozen by betrayal so deep it left him speechless. Either way, the internet was eating it up, dissecting his every move, or lack thereof. For Chrissy, Jim's silence was a dagger. Behind closed doors, sources say she demanded answers. "Why aren't you standing up for me? Why aren't you shutting this down?" she allegedly asked. But Jim didn't have an easy answer. The bond between him and Cam was complicated. This wasn't just an enemy taking shots. This was a brother, someone he had once built his empire with, dragging his family through the mud. Meanwhile, Cam doubled down. Instead of backing off as fans begged him to, he leaned harder into the chaos, posting cryptic messages like "Don't start nothing you can't finish," and receipts always hit different. Cam made it clear he wasn't bluffing. He had ammo and he wasn't afraid to use it. The streets were divided. Harlem natives who grew up watching Dipset rise to power shook their heads in disbelief. "This ain't how it's supposed to be," one old fan said in a viral video. Cam and Jim were brothers. To see it come to this, to see Chrissy dragged into the middle, that's sad, man. It's not what the culture needs. But younger fans saw it differently. To them, this was the kind of messy, jaw-dropping drama that made hip-hop entertainment irresistible. "Cam a savage for this," one fan tweeted. "Jim better respond or it's over for him," another joked. "Chrissy somewhere throwing her shoe at Jim right now?" The memes were endless. Pictures of Jim looking stunned, Chrissy crying, and Cam laughing like a puppet master pulling the strings. Every social media platform became a battlefield of opinions, with fans choosing sides in a feud that was getting uglier by the hour. And it wasn't just fans talking. Industry insiders began to weigh in too. Some rappers warned Cam to back off, reminding him that family shouldn't be used as collateral in beef. Others called Jim out for staying quiet, suggesting that silence was making him look weak. "You gotta protect your queen," one veteran rapper posted. "Ain't no excuse for letting the internet clown her like that." Behind the scenes, Chrissy was reaching her breaking point. She had stood by Jim through years of uncertainty, waiting for a proposal, enduring his lifestyle, and even putting her own career on hold to support him. But now, with her name being humiliated online and Jim refusing to clap back, she started asking herself if it was worth it anymore. She felt abandoned, an insider revealed. She kept saying, "If he won't protect me now, when will he ever?" Jim, on the other hand, was in a mental war of his own. He was furious at Cam, but deep down, he also knew Cam had the power to keep exposing more. If he came at Cam too hard, would more secrets spill out? Was silence his way of protecting Chrissy, or was it just cowardice disguised as strategy? The tension in their home grew unbearable. Sources say arguments between Jim and Chrissy got heated, with Chrissy demanding a public defense and Jim refusing to take the bait. At one point, Chrissy allegedly shouted, "You're choosing him over me." Words that cut deep because no matter what Jim did, it looked bad. If he fought back, the war would escalate. If he stayed silent, Chrissy looked unprotected. Meanwhile, Cam was thriving off the chaos. He went live on Instagram, smirking into the camera as fans bombarded him with questions. "Y'all keep asking me if I went too far," he said with a laugh. "Too far is when you got no receipts. I always got receipts." The smirk, the arrogance, the sheer confidence, it sent fans into a frenzy. Entertainment outlets began running with the story. Gossip blogs published think pieces about Chrissy's humiliation and Jim's silence, while mainstream outlets debated whether Cam had crossed the line from beef into bullying. Some said Cam's move was unforgivable. Others praised it as one of the boldest power plays in hip-hop history, but the real fallout was happening behind the scenes. Chrissy reportedly stopped speaking to Jim for days, shutting him out emotionally as she tried to process the humiliation. Jim, caught between defending his pride and protecting his woman, started isolating himself. Friends say he spent hours locked in the studio, trying to channel his anger into music, but the lyrics never came. The betrayal cut too deep. To make matters worse, Cam hinted he wasn't done. He began teasing that the leak was just the beginning, suggesting he had even more damaging information waiting to be revealed. That threat hung heavy over Jim and Chrissy's relationship, like a storm cloud ready to break at any moment. By now, the world was watching with popcorn in hand. Would Jim finally snap and go after Cam publicly? Would Chrissy walk away from the relationship she had fought so hard to maintain? Or would Cam make good on his threat and drop an even more devastating bombshell? One thing was clear: this wasn't just drama anymore. This was a ticking time bomb, and when it went off, the explosion would shake more than just Harlem. It would ripple across the entire hip-hop world. And for Jim Jones, still stunned into silence, the choice was slipping out of his hands. If he didn't act soon, the damage might be irreversible. When the dust seemed like it might finally settle, another storm brewed, this time fueled by the public's reaction. Camron's explosive leak didn't just expose Chrissy Lampkin and leave Jim Jones in shock. It ignited a wildfire that spread across social media, gossip outlets, and even mainstream news. This wasn't just Harlem drama anymore. This was national. The hashtag Chrissy exposed trended on Twitter for days. TikTok was flooded with reaction videos, some mocking, some sympathetic, all going viral. Instagram lives, podcasts, and YouTube panels dissected every detail. People were asking the big questions. Was Chrissy unfairly targeted? Did Jim deserve this humiliation after years of tension with Cam? And most of all, did Camron finally cross the line from rap beef to pure cruelty? In the middle of the chaos, Chrissy made her first subtle move. She posted a cryptic Instagram story, a black screen with just 4 words: "Enough is enough." That simple post set the internet ablaze. Was she talking about Cam? About Jim's silence? Or about the entire toxic cycle that had followed her since the early days of love and hip-hop? Fans speculated wildly, with some predicting a breakup, others predicting a legal battle. And a few convinced Chrissy was about to air out her own receipts. But instead of clarifying, Chrissy went quiet again, leaving everyone on edge. Jim Jones, however, couldn't stay silent forever. With pressure mounting, he finally took to Instagram Live. Thousands tuned in instantly, waiting to see him clap back at Camron, defend Chrissy, or at least clear the air. But what fans got was unexpected. Jim sat in the dark, his face barely lit, his tone heavy. "Y'all want me to get up here and go back and forth with somebody I called my brother?" he began. "Y'all want me to clown, to argue, to do all this for the internet? I'm not doing that. I'm not feeding into no circus." Some fans applauded his maturity. Others felt he was dodging the real issue. Jim continued, his voice breaking at times. "What's been said, what's been shown that's between me, my lady, and God, ain't nobody else got the right to put their 2 cents in our business." But the internet wasn't satisfied. They wanted fire. They wanted revenge. They wanted Jim to take a stand for Chrissy in the same way she had always taken a stand for him. Instead, his calmness came across to many as weakness, even cowardice. Meanwhile, Camron watched the whole thing unfold with amusement. He threw more fuel on the fire by posting memes mocking Jim's darkroom speech, adding captions like, "Somebody check on him," with laughing emojis. The pettiness was undeniable and the crowd ate it up. But behind the laughs and memes, the consequences were getting real. Chrissy and Jim's relationship was now hanging by a thread. Insiders claimed Chrissy felt utterly humiliated. She had spent over a decade defending Jim against rumors, against his mother's disapproval, against fans who said she deserved better. And now, when she needed his strongest defense, he gave the bare minimum. She feels abandoned, one source revealed. She's asking herself, if he can't stand up for me now, will he ever? To make matters worse, Cam wasn't done. He hinted in another interview that he had even more information, calling the first leak light work compared to what he could really unleash. "Y'all ain't even seen nothing yet," he smirked. That chilling promise kept fans glued to their phones, waiting for the next shoe to drop. The industry began to take sides. Some rappers spoke out publicly against Cam, calling his actions reckless and damaging to hip-hop culture. Others, however, quietly distanced themselves from Jim, fearing the drama might spill onto them. Suddenly, Jim and Chrissy found themselves more isolated than ever before. Then came the backlash against Cam. While many were entertained, others felt he had gone too far by dragging a woman into a beef between men. Say what you want about Jim, but Chrissy didn't deserve this. One female rapper tweeted, earning thousands of likes. Feminist blogs picked up the narrative, framing Cam's actions as misogynistic, using Chrissy as collateral in a war that asked nothing to do with her. Public opinion began to shift. The same crowd that had laughed at memes started asking serious questions. Had Cam damaged his own legacy in pursuit of clout? Was this the moment where the Dipset icon crossed from respected legend into petty instigator? Jim and Chrissy, sensing the tide turning, decided to make a bold move. Days after the leak, they appeared together in public for the first time, walking hand in hand into a New York restaurant, deliberately facing the paparazzi. The message was clear. United front. Photos of the couple went viral instantly. Some praised Chrissy for standing by her man, others criticized her for forgiving too quickly. But one thing was certain, the image shifted the narrative, if only slightly. From humiliation to resilience. Inside, though, the wounds hadn't healed. Reports claimed Jim and Chrissy were still arguing behind closed doors, still fighting about whether he had done enough to protect her, still grappling with the shadow Cam had cast over their lives. And Cam, he stayed unbothered. He continued promoting his ventures, teasing fans, and basking in the attention. For him, it wasn't just about revenge, it was about reminding everyone he was still a force to be reckoned with. But while Cam thrived, Jim and Chrissy's relationship remained on shaky ground. The trust between them had been shaken, not just by Cam's leak, but by Jim's response to it. Could they truly survive this? Could they rebuild what was broken? For now, only time will tell. What's clear is that this explosive leak didn't just expose Chrissy, it exposed the fragility of Jim and Chrissy's love, the cracks in Dipset's brotherhood, and the brutal reality of what happens when private lives get dragged into public wars. This wasn't just another headline. This was history the day Camron detonated a bomb that left Jim Jones stunned, Chrissy humiliated, and fans questioning whether some wounds ever truly healed. And if Cam wasn't bluffing about holding more receipts, the story might not even be over yet. Camron's explosive leak didn't just expose Chrissy. It sent shockwaves through hip-hop history. But now the real question is, what do you think? Was Cam justified in airing out old wounds? Or did he cross a line by dragging Chrissy into the middle of his beef with Jim? Should Jim Jones have come out swinging to defend the woman who stood by his side for over a decade? Or was his silence a smart move to avoid adding fuel to the fire? We want to hear your take. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Who do you think came out looking worse in this situation? Cam, Jim, or Chrissy? And most importantly, do you think their relationship can survive a betrayal and humiliation this big? If you were as stunned by this as we were, smash that like button so more people see this story. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell, because trust me, this drama isn't over yet. Cam has already hinted that more receipts could drop at any moment. And when that happens, you'll want to be the first to know. Stay locked in, the saga continues. Saga continues.